Welcome to House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Victor Producer, and joining me as always is Gilbert Manzano, who does it for Sports Illustrated MMQB. And after a couple of technical difficulties, we're finally on here. We're ready to discuss the Rams 2025 schedule. We're gonna give you guys our takeaways, but Gilbert, just your overall, just big picture of the whole schedule here for the Rams. What was your biggest kind of like takeaway right off
I'm
the
not,
bat?
I'm not gonna lie to you, Vic. I guess to kind of give you the behind the scenes, like I guess
Yes.
my job at SI, I look at the NFC mostly. By the way, check out my story at
Yes.
si.com. I did all the final record predictions for the NFC, so the Rams are on there. Maybe you like the Rams record, maybe you don't. I don't know, but I'm gonna piss off a lot of fan bases tonight and tomorrow with my NFC record predictions, but they also made me type out all the NFC schedules week by week, day, time,
Oh wow.
location, and my eyes started burning after 5 or 6 of these. So it's like I wrote them, but I never
Yeah.
processed anything. So I'm glad we're doing the show right now to like really break down the Ram schedule and see what I missed here. But I guess off the bat, one thing I didn't notice because I was curious, I think the Cowboys had 8 primetime games, freaking 8 games in primetime. And then at one point, I thought they had 5 Thursday games, but my eyes were so blurry by then that TNF and SNF looked the same. So
Yeah.
they have 4 Thursday night games. I'm like, that's insane. The Bears are getting a lot of love, which I think is reckless after last year. You know, they got the hype last year and they flopped and they let Caleb Williams get sacked 68 times. And this year they got more offseason additions and they're once again, beloved. And the one that earned it though, the Commanders, they're going to be on prime time a lot because Jaden Daniels was fun to watch a year ago, but maybe Jaden Daniels could be set up for a sophomore slump. And then also, the Rams to keep it with the home team here, they got a good amount of primetime games. That late in the season, I think it was maybe it's a Monday night or I think it's Monday night in Atlanta against the
Yep.
former coach Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson. That could be a big playoff implication game right there too. So yeah, a lot of primetime games that I got to kind of somehow absorb. I'm writing these schedules out. Okay, time, date, location. I can't do it, man. It's very tedious.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate this time of year because of that. But I also like it because you got to call your shots, man. You have no more excuses. Excuses.
Yeah.
Free agency, frenzy in the rearview mirror. The draft completed. It's in the books, and now the schedule is in order. That honestly makes a big difference because I want to say I was very harsh on the 49ers. I'm sure the Rams fans will appreciate that. But their schedule, the first 5 weeks, it's kind of a cupcake. I'm going to put it out there. So stuff like that matters, and we'll talk about it right now in terms of
Yeah.
the Rams' point of view.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things we discussed on Compass on the Beat yesterday, in terms of the wish list that we were kind of hoping for the Rams, one of them came true, and that was that they're going to get a bye week in Week 8, Gilbert,
Oh yeah,
right after their London trip to face the Jaguars. So that was one of the things that. The other thing I said, maybe not get 2 Thursday night football games. They got two of them again. They're very popular on Thursday night. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Amazon was trying to recruit Sean McVay, and maybe they want
more
they're
meetings.
like, well, if we weren't able to get him on the booth, we're gonna get him twice a year now. So two years in a row, Amazon Prime gets 2 games, and yeah, it's three Gilbert for the three East Coast road trips, all with 10 a.m. Starts, are within the first 6 weeks. Gilbert,
Mm.
that's something. They'll have another one in week 13. So four of them, and as you said, that one to Atlanta is a primetime game, but four primetime games for the Rams as well, as you talked about. But I'm with you too. Like, I had to put in some of these games in here for our banners, and I was just like, well, I understand, and you having to do it for uh, all the teams in the NFL must have been pretty hard because, like I said, I had to do this. It took me about 15 to 20 minutes to do it myself.
Yeah, but I think from the Rams' point of view, like I think the schedule, the first couple months, like you
Yes.
mentioned, it broke their way favorably. You get the AFC South. Those teams are terrible. So you get the
Yeah.
can I start doing the wins loss wins?
Yes, let's go. Let's
Uh,
start
but
with week one versus the no, I'm kidding. No, go
But
ahead.
if you want, I could say for the first, 3 out of 4, I think they should beat the Texans. They should beat the Titans in Tennessee. Those are the
Right.
first 2 games right there, Vic. They could be 2-0, and I wanna say the last 2 years have been 1-1 or 0-2. They were 1-4
They
last
were
year. They were
1-4, yes.
and then 3-6 the year before. So there's no excuses to start off that slow. And
Yeah.
then Vic, you've been challenging this team to not have slow starts anymore. I get the Eagles game in week 3 is going to be tough in Philly, but after that, you get another AFC South team, the Colts in Indy. So you got to come out at least 3-1, or if you beat the Eagles, maybe you could afford a loss against the AFC South teams, and then obviously you get that London game with the Jaguars. So by week 7, you get all 4 AFC South teams. So that's kind of the break here for the NFC West, getting to play that division.
Yeah, I think, and we'll get into the toughest part of the schedule, but the first 7 weeks, Gilbert, I get you get the Eagles. I'm kind of disappointed that this is not a primetime game. I don't understand
Oh
why
yeah,
it's not.
10 a.m.
It's
Yeah,
a 10 a.m. game. Like, it makes no sense to me, and I get it. I'm sure Fox wanted to keep that one. So yeah, I don't understand that. But you also get the Ravens there week 6. We'll see how that one goes. We saw last time the Ravens and Rams faced each other. It was one of the best games 2 years ago. So that'll be something to keep an eye on as well. But as Joaquin said, having the bye week mid season is crucial. Like,
yeah.
last couple of years, it was early on in the season. Now they get it halfway through, which is something that I kind of was talking about as well. I think that one was also huge for them.
But I
The
wonder how
other,
much it kind of evens out. Like you have to go all the way to freaking London, and then your
yes,
body takes the toll, and then you have to come back. And do you really get a week off? It's gonna go by very quick. So that's me kind of trying to look at the other side of it. But week
yeah.
8 is good.
Well, the other thing is that they'll be at home against the Saints, so at
Oh
least
yeah,
it's not
cupcake.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Another one.
So and so I think that's where it benefits them. And then I thought the other thing too, just to kind of give the macro view of the schedule. Um, I think the back end 6, I think it's 5 of the 6 divisional games all come at the end of the season, Gilbert.
Yeah,
Yeah,
between
5 of the
Cardinals,
6 games
Cardinals,
in the
Seahawks.
second half of the season. So that's what you want too. You want to be able to face your divisional opponents down the stretch, because we've seen this team kind of take off when they go up against their divisional opponents.
I honestly like the way their big boy opponents are spread out. Like you get the
Yes.
2 AFC South teams in the first 2 weeks, but then the Eagles in week 3. Okay, by then no more rust. You got the preseason rust out the way. Play the Eagles in Philly, and then you get. I'm not gonna count out the 49ers because divisional matchups are always gonna be tough. But after that, you get the Colts, 49ers, and then the Ravens in Baltimore. So those spread out there, and then you don't really face another besides divisional opponents. Those are always scary. I'm not gonna count them out,
Mm-hmm.
but another non-divisional opponent that's a Super Bowl contender, you don't really get
Until the Lions week
the Lions,
15.
right? Yeah,
Yes.
at home, which will be
Yep.
beneficial during that part. I don't want to count out the Buccaneers just yet. They're going to be a
Right.
tough team too at home, by
Another
the way.
another home game.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yes, and then the Falcons on the road late could be a good indicator for how prepared are you for the playoffs. So to me, I think I broke their way.
Yeah, and it's also, I was thinking about this as well with I like the fact, if we're looking at it as just uh objectively, uh looking at the schedule for the Rams, I like it in terms of, I like having the Rams be able to face their tough opponents early in the season, those good games, because you never know how it's going to go later in the season. Like, I really didn't like the fact that they got to face the Lions week 1 last season. I
Oh
kind
yeah,
of wanted
yeah.
to get it midway. Now they get it at the back end of the season, but at least you get the Eagles right off the bat week 3, and you get the Ravens week 6, which is kind of spread out. So that's the other thing. But I think those 10 a.m. games, we've seen Sean McVay be good at, really good, has a good record in 10 a.m. games. But it's going to be a challenge, that's for sure, the first 6 weeks with those the Eagles and the Ravens in the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, good point. That's probably the most difficult part. Like the way the schedule is set up, in terms of opponents, it's nicely set up. But yeah, you got a good amount of road games to the East Coast early on, at Philly, at Baltimore, in London for Jacksonville. The Jaguars are still the Jaguars, but you have to go all the way out there, and they're familiar with that grind, that type of game, and playing in London so many times over the last few years. But maybe it's better to get that early. It's a young team. I think Joaquin is mentioning the young defense, so they're able to,
Yep.
you
Yeah,
know,
he's saying defense is going to be even faster and scary this year. A verse for defensive play. Yeah, he's one of those guys I've already seen. I think he's in the top 5 in terms of betting for defensive player of the year as a
but
candidate.
they get the Houston Texans terrible offensive line.
Yep.
We'll find out if they're that terrible on paper. They are. They seem like it. So that front against Tennessee, and then week 2 you get a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. So it could be a big opening 2 weeks for Jared Verse and the entire defensive line. So and then after that you get the real test with the Philly offensive line. So again, like especially for a team that doesn't prioritize preseason, all the starters could kind of use the first 2 weeks, and maybe I'm getting in trouble counting out the AFC South, but they've been terrible for the last few years.
Yeah.
So I think I'm okay talking like that.
Yeah, and until we see it, I think both the AFC South and the NFC South. That's why I was like, I was a little concerned in terms of the Rams as a team because I still think they need work. They still need to add some players. I think some depth to this team. But looking at the schedule, the fact that they're facing the AFC South and the NFC South, I think that's very beneficial. But at the same time, as I said, having to play the Ravens and the Eagles early in the season. And the other thing too, Gilbert, they're not going to have bad weather games late in the season. I mean, you get the Eagles in week 3 and then the Ravens in week 6. But then after that, you're facing the Lions at home. You go to the Seahawks in
Yeah.
week 16 at the Falcons. It's a dome team.
Hmm.
So, I mean, maybe Carolina, we'll see, but that's usually a warm weather
Yeah.
trip. So not a lot of East Coast in the game in bad weather like we've seen. Whether as you remember, I said the last 2 seasons, I said against the Jets worries me late in the season, and against the Giants because those are going to be bad
Yep.
weather games, and they don't have one outside of the Panthers late in the season. I mean, at the
Yeah.
Seahawks, but that's a divisional game. It's not going to matter because both of these teams are gonna they're when it's a divisional game, it can go either way.
Yeah, and Seattle is not like New York, or I think they played the Patriots in Foxborough in December last year. I forget, or
Right.
yeah, I think they did. But yeah. So that's another good catch by you there. And then I even like the way the NFC West is like set up. Like you mentioned, the back end, you don't really play it. Like to me, sometimes I hate these divisional games in the first couple of weeks. Like come on, you're supposed to be
Yeah.
the most important games. You know each other very well. You want to be at the at your best shape, your top form, and to get the 49ers in Week 5 on Thursday Night Football, I can't wait to see that. Even the Seahawks, another TNF game in Seattle. Sam Darnold and Cooper Cup, by the way. When is the first Seahawks game? Actually, no, week 11. That's a long time. Well, Cooper
Yep.
Cup stay healthy. I'm not trying to take a
Yeah.
shot there, but he's older. I kind of maybe that one, maybe where the 49ers are in week 5. I would rather see Seattle there to see Cooper Cup, but we'll see how he does. But uh, yeah, in the entire NFC West, I'm going to sound a little bit like last year, but I'm high in Arizona again. Kyler Murray, better not let me down. I was very low in San Francisco, but looking at their schedule, I'm like, oh man, did I make a mistake here? And then Seattle, I don't like the addition of Sam Darnold and Cooper Cup and DeMarcus Lawrence, but their draft was very good. So in year 2 for Mike McDonald, I'll give you kind of a teaser for my story. I have 2 teams coming out the NFC West for the playoffs, and actually only 1 team from the NFC North. That division was pretty fraudy last year in the playoffs. So, and then 3. I'm gonna keep giving more. So 3 from the NFC East. So check out that story at si.com. But I do like 2 teams from the NFC West, and go find out which ones.
Yeah, I like 2 teams from the NFC West as well.
Okay.
I'm with you. I think we might differ. I
Mm.
I know we
San
will.
Francisco
They're
or
both.
Seattle
I
or
would say
Arizona.
two. I'll say this. Both of them wear red. I would be my guess.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
yeah, not both teams make it, but I think the two teams that wear red in the NFC West, I think one of them you have and I have the other one making the
Okay.
playoffs this
Yeah,
year.
that's pretty accurate.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
not high on Sam Darnold, so that's so that's
yeah.
kinda
No,
giveaway
I
there.
am not. I'm not putting the Seahawks there
Yeah,
yet.
I'm
No,
not. But
not with
even
Sam
their
Darnold.
team looks pretty good. So,
Yeah,
it's not an easy division by any means. That's why I got 2 teams making it there. People wanna overrate the NFC North, that's fine. Maybe the NFC East gets a little overrated, and I'm overrating them. I'm being the culprit there for overrating them, but they did a lot of moves there. George Pickens, Deebo Samuel going to the Commanders and the Cowboys. I even like the Giants, but they have a brutal schedule. They're playing their own division, NFC East. They're playing the AFC West, 3
West, which is.
playoff teams last year.
Would you say the AFC West is the best division in football going into this
Mm,
season?
I gotta think about it. But to finish my point on the Giants, they also
Yeah,
have to play the damn NFC North. So like
right.
that's brutal for even if they got the last place schedule. That's my another observation. There's no gimmies for the Giants. Brian Davis, sorry, but I honestly I haven't really wrapped my mind around the AFC because I haven't had them this offseason. But like even to the Raiders, I like them, but like I like the Broncos a lot. I know our guy Fernando doesn't like the Broncos, but I like the Broncos. And
Yeah,
obviously, I'm not gonna adapt the Chargers after last year. That they made me look like a fool because the Jim Harbaugh effect, and they should be better in year two. So, and even with the Chiefs, I'm not ready to jump off the bandwagon just because it got beat down by in one game in the Super Bowl. But I'm not saying they're going to be, you know, terrible, but they're still going to be in the mix. So I think
right.
it makes it a very competitive division. It's just to me that the NFC North with just too many question marks. New quarterback in Minnesota, McCarthy coming off an injury. I just don't get the vision in Green Bay. The Jordan Love progression is worrisome. They got a bunch of wide receivers after they supposedly had a lot of good receivers, and they never added to the defense. And then Detroit has to start the season without potentially, I think he'll be ready, but Aiden Hutchinson, Liam McNeil, and then the two new coordinators, no Aaron Glenn, and then no Ben Johnson. So that to me, that's why I favor the NFC East a little more, and that's why I'm saying don't count out the NFC West because I think that division could be very competitive. I had higher hopes last year, but that division failed me a year ago.
Yeah, and I feel like I always do this too, Gilbert, is that I feel like I'm a year ahead. Like I had the Commanders in the playoffs 2 years ago, and then they make the playoffs last year. And there's been other teams where I'm just a year ahead, and that's how you feel. But we know how easily the NFL turns, and
Oh yeah,
I just I we'll
I
see
took a
what
gamble on the
happens.
NFC South too, Vic. So
Yeah, I know.
that's why, but I really don't like it.
We'll see, because I mean the Buccaneers. Every year I
Every
try.
yeah.
Every year I try to discount them, and
Mhm.
we'll see. We'll see
I
what
don't think I've ever
happens.
picked them to win their division every year. So since they've been on this run, maybe since Tom Brady left, I have not picked them to win the division, and that's good for them.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. It's worked out for them. So, but Joaquin says that the Rams will sweep the division convincingly. Nobody can convince me otherwise.
Oh, I don't know, man. It's
Yeah,
gonna be tough. These
it's
rivalry
gonna be.
games, even if the
Yeah,
even if the 49ers or the Seahawks struggle, like I still wouldn't be surprised if they split that series because they know each other very well. Coaches they know each other very well. But maybe even if you go like I don't know 3-3 in division, like I can see the Rams stacking a bunch of wins with the schedule. But to me, I want to see how they do against the Philadelphia,
yep,
Baltimore. Like last year, we that was kind of my big talking point was the noticeable gap between the real contenders and the playoff teams, and it kind of felt like the Rams were somewhere in that middle. Like they weren't like a fringe playoff team, but they had a ceiling where they weren't going to compete. With Philadelphia, obviously they took them to that last play. But come on, they allowed 200 yards to Saquon Barkley in the ground. They did it twice.
yeah,
For me, we'll see if Devontae Adams pays off, Puna Ford pays off. Going with tight end in the second round, Terrence Ferguson, does that pay off? So I'm very skeptical of this roster still. There's some holes there, but I really like the way that the schedule broke. And then sometimes that's kind of the way that season plays out for you. If you're able to win with a favorable schedule, did you get a first place schedule or a last place schedule? Where'd you get your bye week? Who got hurt where? Things like that matter in the NFL.
yeah. And I mean, kind of breaking down the schedule too. Like it's weird too, Gilbert. Like, and the Rams have one of those weird unbalanced schedules too, because you have no home games between October 2nd and November 2nd. So for a month, with the London trip, and then you have only 2 home games after Thanksgiving. So, I mean, you're gonna have to stack some wins, like you said, and the other thing we talked about too is like before the bye week, you have, as we mentioned, you have the Texans, the Titans, the Colts, the 49ers, and the Jaguars. You need to make sure you come out of that, especially since you're facing the Eagles and the Ravens. If you come out of that 4-2 or 5-1,
Mm-hmm.
you need to make sure you do that with no injuries, as we said. And then because you come out of the bye week, you get the Saints, but then you go to the 49ers. You're going up against the you're also you go to the 49ers, then you come home to the Seahawks and the Buccaneers, and then you go to the Panthers. So you're gonna have to stack up those wins. And as you said, I mean, you can always guarantee that you're gonna have a good record against the division, which they've done the last 2 seasons. You just it's not a guarantee, and we've seen that. So I'm interested now, Gilbert, in terms of just where do you have this team? I don't want you to give me a prediction because I kind of want to wait for that. But in terms of like you said last season, and I give you credit for this because you never went off of it, and you said, I don't see this team, moving on past the second round. To me, it's like they'll win they'll win the game, which they did against the Vikings, but you had them losing to whoever they faced. They ended up facing the Eagles and they lost. And I get it. I know a lot of people are saying, hey, they were the only team that gave the Eagles the best game they had, when they went on the run to the playoffs. But at the same time, you kind of look and there's still some weaknesses there. So where are you at right now? Like I know things can change between now and the start of the season, but where do you have this team right now in terms of the upper echelon of the NFC?
You know what's kind of funny? Maybe next week's spring meetings for the owners could really dictate how far the Rams go. Because if the Eagles lose that tush push, that's going to
Yeah,
be a difference maker. I feel like, and the reason the Rams and Sean McVay is saying, "Get that out of here."
yep.
McVay's calling all his buddies, LaFleur, O'Connell, vote against it. I feel like it's gonna get banned next week. So maybe that's a benefit to the Rams because they like to play smaller football with more athletic guys and beefy guys. So I kind of think that's, at least to me, it's weak sauce, is a weak take to try to ban something that, a team has, gotten better at than every other team. Like you could train at it too if you want. You want to get bigger players, go ahead and do it. But I don't know if that's going to make a big difference. But to me, I still like the Eagles roster, and it's kind of wild because they lost Josh Sweat, they lost Milton Williams, Slay, they lost CJ Gardner Johnson. But Nolan Smith Jr. had a breakout playout. He's ready to ascend. You paired the All Pro Zach Bond with Jahad Campbell. So they keep just reloading and they still got that offensive line. I think the offensive line makes all the difference. That's what I'm talking about, the tush push. And I think Jalen Hurts doesn't get enough credit. And so you kind of compare the roster. It's not that easy. That's not football. It doesn't get that simple. But I just still worry about the Rams back end of the defense, the cornerbacks, the linebackers. I even worry about the offensive line. Like I kept telling myself they needed maybe to get a new cornerstone piece there. They haven't done it. Coleman Shelton at center or Bo Limmer or Avila. I don't know, but I worry about that. Rob Havenstein having procedures on his shoulders. I worry about that too. But I'm going to count on a productive head coach, a
Hmm.
quarterback that can still sling it, a GM that knows how to make moves, a Devonta Adams addition, which I am high on to go with Puka Nakua. I think, unless Adams falls off the cliff in terms of production, he still played pretty well, even though he was in that crappy team in the New York Jets. He still dominated, and he has to be a number two, not number one. So I think that's maybe good for Devonta Adams here. I don't think Puna 4 is going to be enough to fix the run defense, but after a while, we can't keep praising Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk for their pass rush. You got to stop the run too. Like your interior guys, that's your
Yeah.
job. You got to close the gap, and you can't just be a one trick pony. We knock a lot of run stoppers, like the big nose tackles, because they're one dimensional, but they stop the run. These guys can't do it. So if you want to be considered like the Dexter Lawrence of the world or Chris Jones of the world, you better do everything. And
Hmm.
I want to see that duo take steps forward. But that's the thing too, Vic. Maybe I need to put more focus in players getting better. Players getting better in year 2,
Yep.
year 3, year 4. But at the same time, is the quarterback going to fall off? Is the offensive line going to fall apart? So it kind of, to me, it feels a little bit like last year. But they're going to be in the game. They're going to be contenders for the division, contenders for the NFC. And like I told you a couple of days ago, I'm not married to any team in the NFC. There's not one team in the NFC that I look at. They're gonna run away with it. Like I really don't. I don't know who to pick.
Yeah, and I think for me, going off of that, I still have the Eagles and the Lions ahead of the Rams, and it all comes down to their offensive lines. I mean, and the problem is that the Rams haven't. Yes, I like I as I said, before you joined, you came back from paternity leave. My thing was I really like the Puna Ford addition more than I do the Devontae Adams, because offensively we know what the Rams can do, and I get it. They were in the middle of the pack. What Devontae Adams takes them into a top 10 offense. I don't know if they can go up to a top 5 depending on what their running backs do in their offensive line.
Yeah.
But my biggest thing is the fact that those two offensive lines are gonna run all over the Rams, because I just still don't, unless they fix that, and I know that for sure. The other thing is, and this goes to Joaquin's question, is Ramsey gonna be a post first, like trade or something? I still don't even. You still need defensive backs, Gilbert. Like Ramsey, I don't know if he can still play outside. Is he going to play inside if he comes here to the Rams? What happens there? So there's still, like I said, there's still a lot of question marks. I understand that the Lions, they just broke down physically. Like everybody got hurt for them. And I still have questions, as you said, when you lose both of your coordinators, but that offensive line travels even
Mhm.
inside or outside. I don't care. And the same thing goes for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm with you, but the Rams, it's all gonna come down to matchups and what happens. I feel like they'll win this division. There's no doubt in my mind that they can win it. Now things can change. Like I said, from now until the start of the season, where I might change my mind in terms of whether this division ends up catching up to the Rams. We'll see what happens. But as of right now, as we're talking, I still like the Lions and the Eagles ahead of the
Yeah.
Rams.
Yeah. If we're gonna rank them, I'm with you. I think we're on the same page on them still being the top two teams. But I think the gap is a little closer
Yes,
now than last year. At least from that sense, because like you mentioned with the Lions, they were broken down, and honestly, they didn't really do enough with their edge rushers. I like that they got the Ohio State run stopper Talik Williams, because and they have their philosophy that actually works. I'm not saying Les Snead's philosophy doesn't work, but like they got some nasty dudes. Like for Detroit, they got the Georgia lineman. That's the thing. Like they lost Kevin Zeitler, and they have like 3 guys ready to compete for that right guard position, and the Georgia kid is one of them. Second round pick. They invested in the offensive line. They invested in the defensive tackle. They need another edge rusher, but when they have a formula that's been working, and we saw it last year, they were the two best teams. And same thing with the Eagles. They had to get a little creative because they lost Mekhi Beck then. They couldn't pay everybody, so they made a trade for Kenyon Green, who was on a rookie contract. They flipped them, and maybe it works out because they have 4 All Pros or 4 Pro Bowlers next to this guy. So Saquon Barkley's behind. So again, I think the tush push is going to really matter there. But yeah, it is closer. I feel like, and like I was talking about the schedule. Looking at the Eagles' schedule, like if you didn't know the order, Vic, you probably say this team for sure is going 13-4 or 14-3. But man, their first 5 weeks are brutal. As we know,
yep,
the Rams are one of them. They play the Cowboys. I think maybe the Cowboys are pretenders, but I think they're going to be better. I
I
think
agree with you.
they play the Broncos. I forget who else. They play the Chiefs in week 2, so they're gonna have a tough first 5 weeks there. So again, it's all about how the schedule breaks for you. So you never know. But this philosophy of playing with smaller guys against those two teams, I don't like it. And that's why I kind of
The
feel like
same.
a little bit of like last year, like yeah, it's those two teams, and then honestly, I'll put the Rams number 3. I'm not worried
Yeah,
about other teams because I like the Cowboys too, honestly, because they're focusing on the trenches. But I don't. I also the Vikings, they focus on the trenches, but I just don't like the unknown of JJ McCarthy. The Packers to an extent also focus on the trenches, but they don't have enough defense. But that's the thing, Vic. We could keep talking in circles here. The 3 three things that the Rams have that they do very well, and you want every team wants this. They have a star quarterback who's clutch, Mathew Stafford. They're loaded with pass rushers. They have that with Jerry Verse leading the way, and then they got skill players: Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams. You got those three things there. You tend to do well. It's just they're missing the big boys, the physical, the ruggedness. That's why I really welcome Jerry Verse talking trash, man. I love that
Yeah.
aspect of the game.
Yeah, and I want to see how these linebackers, these rookie linebackers, pan out too.
Mhm.
Like Chris Paul, and et cetera. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, things can change between now, where we're looking at, and then now looking at the schedule. As you said, the Eagles have a tough schedule. The Lions, the Rams, they all have first place schedule. They're facing some of those first place teams now, and I just think the way it broke, the Rams got they're I feel like out of those three teams, the Rams need to have the best record in the NFC. You want to you want to have the best record to be able to host those teams, because I feel like if you have to go to Detroit or you have to go to Philly, I don't think you can win. I'm being just completely honest as of right now, but we'll see. There's still a lot that is going to happen for the next couple months, but um, yeah. Daniel wants to know thoughts on the bye week. He says he likes it.
Yeah, I like it too, Daniel, and good to see your prediction 12-5 or 13-4. And I'm not gonna complain too much about any team getting a middle of the season bye week, but I think there's some downside to having it after a London trip. It's like, does it feel like a half bye week because you're gonna be so tired after that London trip? Is 1 week enough to recover? 10 days would be nice, but or I guess it's technically 2 weeks, right? Because you go over that one
Right.
week and then you play again. But
And then you play
you know,
the Saints.
and you play it in, so maybe you get another week. So maybe that's like, again, Daniel. Like, if you check at the beginning, I think the schedule really worked out. The way the stretches are, the way the road trips are. Vic brought up there's not a lot of East Coast road trips in the back end of the schedule, so I think it was a very favorable schedule for the Rams, and even for a first place schedule, it doesn't feel like it's loaded with juggernauts because they got to play the AFC South. That's gonna be a big break for them. But we know about this team. They've been in the playoffs the last 2 years. You don't want any cupcakes. You want to know if you're the best of the best because they've been maxed out in the second round and the first round. You want to see this team go further. So playing Baltimore, playing Philadelphia, playing Detroit, we'll see what they're made of there. But yeah, there's a lot to dissect here. After now that the schedule has been released, we'll see how they do. And there's another point I wanted to make that I'm blanking on, but I'll get back to it. But
The other one is
yeah, go
that the
ahead.
Rams they will travel the second most miles during the
Oh,
regular season,
damn.
behind the Chargers. They're going to travel 34,832 miles this season.
The
So,
London trip.
the, yeah, the London trip, those 10 a.m. games early on in the season, three of them in the first six games. So yeah, I but like you said, the thing is, it kind of broke for them because they're getting to face the AFC South and the NFC South. So and like I said, they just need to make sure that they end up with a better record than the Lions and the Eagles, and so they have that chance because they get to face the weaker of the divisions. I feel like, if you ask anybody, they'll tell you that the AFC South and the NFC South are in the bottom four of the divisions in
Yeah,
terms of
and they got both of those.
yeah, and they got both of them.
But
So
I'll give you one before we head. I'll give you
yes,
a trap game that I'm looking
yes,
at,
please,
and I think it's at Carolina late in the
yep.
season. They know the DC knows them very well. Evero, uh, it depends if Derek Brown stays healthy and JC Horn stay healthy. But I really like what Carolina did this offseason. I know Treshaun Warden is not a household name. He played for the Chiefs. He was a number two to Chris Jones, but he's going to help that run defense there. Uh, they got a couple other playmakers. I like their draft class. Gaten McMillan, the Arizona kid, as wide receiver for Bryce Young. They got a couple edges in the second round. Their O line. Speaking of O lines, their O line is pretty nasty. Like
Hmm.
if the starting five doesn't regress, it should be very good. And they have like 3 or 4 quality running backs. And the first one is Chuba Hubbard, who's very good. It's all set up for Bryce Young. If he's good, this could be a sleeper team. If he's not good, then
Yeah.
they're not going to be any good at all. But at least the Panthers have a roster to see if he's gonna be a franchise quarterback or not. And if he is, I'm gonna circle that game for a potential trap game. Remember last year, I think you mentioned it was maybe
The Giants,
the Giants
yeah,
last
the
year, and
Jets, and then the
yeah.
Giants the year before.
So
Yep.
that could be one there for this year.
Yeah, and that's the one I would have gone with as well because I looked at it. I'm like, the rest of them are either divisional games or you have the Lions or the Falcons. The Falcons doesn't seem like a trap game because you're going up against Raheem Morris. So I'm with
Prime time
you.
too.
It would be week 13 would be the trap game there. Outside of that, I just don't see a trap game unless you count the Jaguars just before the bye week. And having to go to London could be a
Wow.
trap, but especially after
That
facing the Ravens and having to go. My guess is they're gonna go straight from Baltimore to London. They're
yeah.
not coming back to LA. And so that would be the other thing to kind of consider. All right, Gilbert. So uh Daniel gave us his prediction. He says 12-5, 13-4. Right now I'm gonna say 11-6.
Mm.
Right now, I'm gonna say 11-6 just because I don't know what I want to see more additions to this made to this team. I want to see whether or not they get Ramsey, whether or not they add more pieces here. So right now I'm going 11-6. Where do you have it right now?
Yeah, and one more thing on the Jaguars game, and that could really show if the secondary is any good at all. Because Brian Thomas Jr. is a handful to try to contain.
Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter too, who's going to play cornerback and receiver. So imagine your DB is trying to keep up with those burners. When we saw last year, especially in the first 2 months of the season, they could not stop those type of guys. The guys who were speedy burners, vertical threats. That's not an easy game. Another potential track, I guess you could say that. But uh, I'm gonna go back to the favorable schedule, and if you really look at it, there's probably maybe 3 or 4 juggernauts, or I guess big boy teams you want to call them, whatever you want to call them. So I'm gonna bump that up to a 12 win season, 12-5. Like even if they say they lose to the Ravens and the Eagles and the Lions, they could still beat a bunch of other teams with the NFC South, the AFC South, and even if they kind of had a couple stumbles in the NFC West, uh, I think it's gonna go their way. I feel a little reckless trying to make them, that much of a favorite in the NFC West, but I like their defensive front. I like their skill players. I like the coach. I like the quarterback, but you never know in the NFL. But I'm
Yep.
gonna go 12-5. I still don't know how much that's gonna expand their ceiling because, like you mentioned, I'm with you. Lions and the Eagles are still in the top 2 in the conference, but in the NFC West, I like the Rams.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. And, an injury can flip things. We've seen it last. Nobody had the 49ers missing the playoffs last season. And so that just happens. Injuries can happen, and it derails the whole season. We saw it here with the Rams a couple years ago, with after coming out off the Super Bowl. Um, a bunch of guys got hurt. So we have Henry just before we leave. It says playing Philly and Baltimore before winter is so key. 11-6 for
Yep.
Henry there. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, Gilbert, as we have this show and we leave you guys here, is the fact that there's no East Coast games late in the season in bad weather. Like they're not gonna have to deal with bad weather late in the season. I think that's a huge thing. You have, as Henry talked about, getting Philly and Baltimore in the first 6 weeks. And then also you get those tests out of the way. That way we'll know how good this team is, Gilbert.
Yeah, no. So, like
Yep.
again, I'm okay with that schedule because you don't get the Eagles right away. You get them in week 3, and then you get the Ravens later on in week 6. So, and then you don't get the Lions until very later on. So, there's no excuses. You don't get like, oh, you got them too early or you got them too late. It's pretty spread, or you didn't get them in a big stretch where you're fatigued or whatever. Like we mentioned, after the bye week, you get the New Orleans Saints. So, LA Rams is going 13-4. That's a lot of wins right there. But yeah, again, sometimes about the schedule, and besides the
Yeah.
travel, I think it's really worked out in their favor.
Yeah, I just try to be cautious, man, because I know that every season is different, and so that's why right now I'm starting at 11-6. It could go up. Like I said, I'm with everybody between 13 and 11 wins. I think it's fair to say for this team.
Yeah.
Let's see what they do. If they're able to get Ramsey and they can add a couple more pieces, I can bump them up to 12-5 and 13-4. So, but that's all the time we have, Gilbert. Thank you so much for having a little bit of time. We had a couple of technical difficulties, so it took us a little while to get on here. But really appreciate you joining us, especially after doing all that scheduling and stuff. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Gilbert. But go ahead and get us out
Yeah,
of here.
let's get out of here. But if you're watching this, follow LA Rams' lead, then Daniel Calderon's lead, Henry Camacho's lead. Give us your final record prediction. There's no more reason to stall. Again, the draft is over. The free
Yep.
agency frenzy is over. Like I guess you could get Ramsey, but is that really gonna make a big old difference? I don't
Yeah.
know. And then we know the order of the schedule. So that's it. Stop stalling. Make your prediction. Live with it from now through week 1 in September, through train. I guess maybe in training camp if something happens. I don't know. But for now, come on, write it in pen, give us your prediction, and be bold about it. So we gave you ours. Victor went 11-6. I went 12-5. Winning records here. If you disagree, let me know too. I love
Yep.
to see disagreement. But it's time to get going here. Hopefully you enjoyed that Brenda song video that the Rams had for the scheduled release. I thought that was like a little creative. But yeah, 14-3 from Joaquin. Thank you for doing that. But time to get going. Ya nos vamos, pues. Vámonos.